Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Dan East Show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, giving you thoughts, commentary, and reviews on all things wrestling. Before I get started, I want to say I hope everybody had an amazing Memorial Day holiday. I hope everybody had an amazing time with your family and everything. And I hope you guys are just having just a great time. Before I go further, shout out to the new subscriber, Hank Ackham. Thanks for your subscription. And to all of you who are new, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for your views on my previous SmackDown video from 5 days ago. That video got over 30 views. So thank you all so much for that. The last time I got a high viewage like that was when I did my own funny review of when Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon grabbed Candice LeRae while Ember was doing the hilarious heavy metal voice with the grab her. That was hilarious. And this video broke that record for most views. So thank you guys so much. Over 30 views. I really appreciate that. That being said, let us get started with a review of Over the Edge 1998, 23 years ago today. Technically 23 years ago yesterday, but who's counting? Either way, it was an interesting event. We saw a lot of things, and one of the things we saw was we saw Mark Mero trick Sable into a roll-up pin, and this was before Mark Mero found spirituality, which I think is pretty cool. Do whatever you feel works for you, but either way, this was before Sable met Brock Lesnar, the mayor of Suplex City, as I like to call him. But anyway, in any event, in JR's words, it was an interesting night. We saw The Rock, who for some reason was limping to the ring, go and face Farouk for The Rock's Intercontinental Championship. A match that The Rock won by cheating, of course, but nonetheless, he won. And instead of taking his win, he started stomping on him again and all. And so, Degenerate, along with all the other members of the Nation of Domination, which I believe was supposed to be a Nation of Islam based wrestling group, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it originally featured Farouk as the leader, but then later on, The Rock became that leader, and it had D'Lo Brown when he was doing all of that, The Godfather, what's that? Mark Henry, who has now gone to AEW. That was a surprise. So I'm curious to see what his role is going to be, because he made his debut on AEW 2 nights prior to this review today. And he looks much more slimmer. He has lost 80 pounds. 80 pounds working out. Wow. Like The Undertaker said in an Instagram post, my career is over. My in-ring career may be over, but the grind certainly isn't. And same can be said with Mark Henry, who was a Hall of Famer in his own right. Everybody's fleeing to AEW, especially with WWE letting go of a lot of people, including Josiah Williams, who was the what I like to call the hip-hop version of Jim Johnson, who makes rhymes to wrestlers' themes. Man, why y'all let him go? Darn! But either way, back to WWE business. Mark Henry, D'Lo Brown, The Rock, and of course The Godfather before he started taking on that character. And even though he was popular, this is just my personal opinion, he hadn't started getting into the character where he was dressing up and walking to the ring with all the ladies behind him. And quite frankly, in my personal opinion, I disagree with that. Yes, I disagree. I'm not a right to censor fan, but I still disagree with that. It's just not cool. The guy's plays the role of something that starts with the letter P, but it rhymes with Limp, but it starts with a P. And I don't think it's cool. I liked him as a wrestler. I I would agree with his popularity as a wrestler, but in that angle, not cool. Imping is not cool. So, just my personal opinion. But either way, moving on, the Nation of Domination took on D Generation X, who came to Farouk's aid, not for Farouk, but to get a little piece of all of them. And ironically, the Nation would later on at that time feature Owen Hart, God rest his soul, one of the greatest, Owen Hart. And Owen Hart was responsible for the Nation getting a victory over D Generation X when Owen Hart, who was in the middle of a rivalry with Triple H, and a couple of months prior was considered the face. I don't know how that happened. I guess, oh yeah, probably because he joined the Nation, and that's what got him hill. Because he was becoming very popular, and with Bret Hart being gone after the Montreal cheap job in late '97, Owen Hart took over as a fan favorite. So why did they turn him heel? I don't know about that. I was really starting to enjoy him as a face, in my personal opinion. Owen Hart. And looking back, I wish WWE had kept him a face. But he is everyone's favorite in heaven. And I know there's a reunion between him and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who, in both of them, are proud of Natalya for becoming tag team champions with Tamina Snuka. Just angels as well as themselves are rejoicing in heaven. But either way, Owen Hart won the match when he used Triple H's pedigree against him on the championship belt. So moving on, we also had Kane versus Vader and a mask versus mask. And it started because Vader interfered in a match with Kane versus The Undertaker in an Inferno match. And Vader came to stop came to stop Kane. I wanted to make sure y'all heard me clearly, from running away from the Inferno fight, and thus helping The Undertaker win. Well, after The Undertaker flew all over the ring through a flaming ring onto both Vader and Kane. But Kane wants revenge for that interference, and so he went up against Vader, mask versus mask. And speaking of mask, last time Vader and Kane fought was at No Way Out of Texas, where Kane injured Vader with taking a wrench and hitting him in the face. And for those of you who watched it, I wouldn't mind that one being censored. Sometimes, as wrestling fans, you're like, oh, that free censorship gets on my nerves. Will y'all stop censoring everything that they hit someone in the head with? But I actually wouldn't mind seeing them censor that because that's a wrench. So, either way, Kane won that match and Vader had to take his mask off. Of course, he was able to wrestle later on and put it back on. The mask back on. Not to be confused with the mask we wear now for protection. But either way, that was that. But one of the things I really want to talk about is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Dude Love in a no holds barred match, which I identified it as a no holds barred match. Because at the previous pay-per-view, Dude Love and Stone Cold went at it, with Stone Cold, I believe intentionally, hitting Mr. McMahon in the head with a chair and giving a couple of double fingers just to add the insult to injury. So I believe he really was trying to hit McMahon. But either way, he thought he had defeated Dude Love, but the match turned out to be Dude Love winning by disqualification. However, Stone Cold retained. But either way, the next time they got together, McMahon, in an attempt to cheat, because I don't think people would like if I said do with the SCR. But either way, in an attempt to cheat Stone Cold out of that championship, McMahon came up with a group of rules, crooked rules, to ensure that the odds would be against him. Making sure that if McMahon was struck as a referee, Stone Cold would be disqualified. then making the match a no holds barred, no count out match. So, which actually made it even more fun because they began to fight in the crowds. They began to fight in the Demolition Derby entranceway. And I want to say this. One of the things I really appreciate about the Attitude Era is that sometimes the good matches would go everywhere. They had matches where you could fight in the crowd. They had matches where you were fighting in the upper entrance area, and we saw them fight around the demolition derby cars that were part of the entry stage decoration at Over the Edge 98. And me personally, I miss the Demolition Derby cars. We saw it at Armageddon 2000. We saw it at Armageddon 99. That was more so tanks and stuff like that. But I really miss that. I miss that attitude like stage creation. I really miss those things right there. They were very entertaining. And it made the show more interesting and things of that nature. So I really miss those, and especially the demolition derby cars, because they fought and they body slammed each other on top of the demolition cars and things like that. It made it fun to watch. I forgot to mention something very, very important. The wild card of that match. One of my all-time favorite wrestlers, the special guest enforcer of that night, The Undertaker, whose hands was empty. He had nothing to do. He had already somewhat took a break from his fight with his brother, even though it was still getting interesting with Paul Bearer revealing in the script that Paul Bearer was the father of Kane, which means that's too much R-rated stuff. Look at the story for yourselves. I'm not going to make the same mistake Jerry did. You guys remember when Jerry and Paul sat together and revealed some very non-PG details and the affair that Paul Bearer had with the Undertaker's mother while married to Undertaker's father in the script. So a lot of that was just non-PG, so I can't talk about that here. But either way, the Undertaker's hands were empty. He didn't have anything to do, so he decided to become the special guest enforcer to ensure that Mr. McMahon wasn't crooked. And he made his presence felt when Pat Patterson, God rest his soul, and I will say this, it was funny at the time when JR used to call Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe the stooges of Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon's stooges. That was hilarious. And more funnier was when he used to make fun of Gerald Briscoe and how he talked. If you have WWE 2K16, play the showcase of Stone Cold Steve Austin and listen to how JR before AEW did his commentary on the showcase, making fun of Gerald Briscoe. Mr. McMahon, thank you, Mr. McMahon. The way he used to mock Gerald Briscoe, Mr. McMahon, thank you, Mr. McMahon, was hilarious. And also the way he used to make fun of Jerry Lawler for being the biggest kiss up. If that is, wait, is that appropriate? I think that's appropriate to say. The biggest ego stroker of Mr. McMahon, because Jerry Lawler was the biggest, would be well paid to be an ego stroker, just like Corey Graves would be well paid to stroke the ego of Baron Corbin. And they're actually good friends in real life, so that helps too. Anyway, back to The Undertaker. Undertaker made his presence very well known when Gerald Briscoe attempted to count the 1, 2, 3 with Dude Love pinning Stone Cold. Undertaker pulled him off and choke slammed him through the announce table. And the same thing with Gerald Briscoe, Mr. McMahon. And the crowd went nuts. Thankfully, Stone Cold was able to get the Stone Cold Stunner on, despite Dude Love accidentally hitting Mr. McMahon with a steel chair. Thankfully, as it was conditioned, with Mr. McMahon being knocked out, Stone Cold pinned Dude Love, grabbed Mr. McMahon's hand and just started tapping his hand to the mat. 1, 2, 3. Undertaker ordered the bell to be rung, and that Stone Cold was the winner. So the employee prevails against the crooked evil boss again. That was fun to watch. So that's all the time I have for you now. I will see you again, and throughout this month, throughout this time to June 20th, we will be doing some reviews on some classics outside of course, giving you SmackDown reviews every Friday. I'll be appearing a couple of times during the week to give you reviews as we gear up for Hell in a Cell. See you next time. Have a great day. Peace.